Good morning, Suzanne. Nice to hear your voice.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the community update. This is Commissioner Paul Fournier. Aaron Scar is out of the office today. Today is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, and we'll call this meeting to order at 8 a.m. As a reminder, our call-in number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607 #. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute their phone. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute yourself when called to speak. Again, pressing *6. It's very important for all others to remain muted. Thank you for that. And we'll start off with a roll call. I already heard and see Commissioner Bell. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so we'll start off. It looks like I saw Eric's number, so Adventist Health.
Hey, good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
We have 13 patients in the hospital today, 7 surgery cases scheduled. Ambulance crews did 7 911 transports, 2 transfers, no transports home yesterday. 64 patients boarding in emergency departments across Oregon. That's 1 less than yesterday. 292 discharge delays, no change from yesterday. We are continuing to wait for dialysis to receive their final approval from CMS, which is the final step that they have to go through. I reached out to DCI yesterday to see where they were at, and the Oregon Health Authority, who is working on behalf of CMS, is reviewing the final plan of correction. And they provided me the plan of correction, and there's like 2 things that needed to be corrected. They both are corrected. The total document is a total of 4 pages. So we hope that that will get them to issue a license to DCI. I know there's a lot of frustration in our community with our patients and family members who are very tired of driving, and we're on the home stretch. And hopefully they'll receive their license any day. And then once they do that, they'll start scheduling patients. But that's kind of where we sit. The last step was the fire inspection. Fire marshal's office did the inspection and had 2 things they found that needed to be corrected. Those have been corrected, and so we wait. So with that, unless you've got questions for me, I will go back on mute.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have one question, but I appreciate the work on that again. It is frustrating. We get calls here, as I'm sure you do. So thank you for being vigilant with trying to get trying to get through that bureaucracy. It's really frustrating, and I know people and patients. It's not fair to them,
right?
For us to be so slow. But I did want to ask you how the holiday weekend was. I didn't want to put you on the spot for stats, the exact stats, but if you had any information on how busy your crews were this weekend.
Yeah, so I had a great weekend. I was at home and built a wall at my house, and so it was a great weekend for me. For our public safety crews, our ambulance crews in particular, they had a very busy weekend, particularly on Saturday. Things really slowed down on Sunday. But talking with my friend who works for the U.S. Forest Service, Sand Lake was packed this weekend, and he sent me a couple pictures. He's been working down there for, I think, 15 to 17 years, and he said it's the busiest he's ever seen it. And we were down there, I think, 8 times on Saturday. We had ambulances down there. So it has a significant impact when we're sending ambulances down there. We're glad to serve those people who recreate out there and get hurt. It's not just injuries. They also have medical issues sometimes. But we're glad to take care of them. It's just keeps things hopping. So they were very busy for most of the day, the daytime hours, and then it trickled off in the evening. But all in all, it was a fairly busy weekend. We averaged about 37 patients a day in the emergency department. So the ED was also busy for the weekend. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I had seen the photos, and I both having worked down there, I have never seen that many vehicles on the flats, that many RVs. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine what it was like. Were there any life flights out of there?
Yeah,
this weekend?
my recollection is we had 2 patients that were flown by Life Flight.
Okay. And secondly, do you know offhand if anybody had any fireworks injuries in the ER this weekend?
I do not have any of that data.
Okay, perfect. Well, I put you on the spot and you came through. I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
No problem. You have a great day.
You as well. And we'll move on now to the Coastal Caucus. I heard Senator Weber, so we'll start off with her. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning. It's nice to be back.
Yeah,
It's been a busy time. I want to start out by thanking Eric for all he's done on this. And I realize the number of patients, especially in dialysis, is growing. And so it is really important that we get that taken care of. And I'm going to make another call today because, you know, my husband always felt that I had a tattoo that said "Born to Nag," and I do it really well. And so I'm going to, you know, I've been in training. Now I will just use it again.
fantastic.
So great parades this weekend. Thank you, Paul, for all your help in the parade down in Cloverdale. It was good to be in the south end of the county.
That was a
Um,
great little parade at Clover's
it
Day.
is.
Yep.
Yes, a great parade. And it's once again, you know, when we're talking about how many people we're seeing, when we were standing up there at the high school and looking down in the field, I've never seen so many people parked down in the field getting ready to go and watch the parade.
No, it was amazing. I've never seen that either. And also, and I wrote this on my Facebook, but people need to stop by Cloverdale because it's a vibrant little town now.
Oh my
All
gosh,
those little
yes.
businesses are filled up, and there's bookstores. My dog groomers. I have a dog groomer I go to down there. There's of course the little cheese store. It's just a quite people. If you haven't been there for a while, you
Yes.
need to go down.
Yes. I try and stop at that cheese store all the time. I love their curds. They're wonderful. Yeah. And, you know, they've named all of the cheeses that they make. And it's really a local effort to, you know, put our history out there too. And that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I did Warrenton on the 4th of July. And once again, just like the June Dairy Parade and Clover's Day, I've never seen so many people. And we actually had more candy to throw out in Warrenton this year than we have ever had. And we ran out about 3 blocks from the end of the parade. And, you know, we weren't just throwing it to the wind. I mean, we realized from the beginning that it was going to be quite a parade. And
Wow.
it was. It's a good time to be up there. It's when I see the 2 gentlemen that own the jewelry store up there that I went to college with in Minnesota, and always have a good visit with them. But the session is ended, and yes, we did end a little early, 2 days. And yes, we were tired, and it was midnight, and it was one of those times where we looked at the session, and it's reminiscent of a movie, an old movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and it ended on a rather dismal note because basically it came down to transportation. The transportation bill that was submitted to the committee and to the legislature was in the last 2 weeks. And you know, when you've got a bill that is at least 120 pages long and the amendments start coming and you end up with 28 amendments, 28 fixes in that short amount of time that people are seeing that are deficiencies within the bill, you have to realize you released that bill too late and there wasn't enough thought put into going forward. I think that if you want a clear picture of it, you should read the Oregonian's article in the opinion section on Sunday. I think it talks very clearly about things that need to be done in that transportation bill. We need to take care of the truckers. They have been overpaying for years, and there's no way that they can ever be made whole for what in excess they have paid. That was not taken care of in that bill. Raising the payroll tax did help with transit, but how much did it help with transit? The other thing is, when the bill was brought out, when it was introduced, the fiscals, the money part of it was not had not been adequately computed. So they really didn't know when they brought the bill out how much was going to be raised and then how much was needed. So the numbers were not there. And so when they started looking at the numbers, of course, it came to about $15 billion over 10 years. That just led to a lot of unintended consequences. And if that bill would have been passed in its entirety, it would have had to have been reworked then in the short session and in the next biennium, because it would have been unequally dispersed throughout the people in the state. And hopefully, we got down to the last day, and I called you, Paul, to tell you what was going on, because first of all, it was a 6-cent gas tax with 3 cents going to ODOT and 3 cents going to the counties and the cities in the 50-30-30 plan, 50-30-20 plan. And then it got changed when it didn't have a lot of support. And so the counties and the cities were left out of the equation. And so we would not have had money dispersed through the gas tax for our roads. And yes, all of these things take time. So it wouldn't have been immediate because it absolutely goes at the rate of government, which sometimes is incredibly slow and thoughtful and thoughtless at the same time. And so it was better to not have a bill go forward that was not representative of what we needed as a state. So we're not sure yet whether the governor is going to call a special session, but I know that people who have been involved are getting coded messages, you might say, on their availability to be able to work on this. I'm going to be meeting with both of the chairs, and I have already met with another chair on going forward with this transportation plan and how we as a coast can benefit from it. I was really, really encouraged by the fact that when the last amendment came out, the last bill came out for transportation, 22 counties were represented at the hearing to give their opinions on how this was going to affect, down to the grassroots. That was really helpful. And I know, Paul, you were involved in that, and I appreciate your being there and adding your voice to the testimony. The next thing is, of course, then this week, the governor issued her cell phone bill, which was something that we in education worked on for, I think, 4 meetings and didn't come up with a solution. And so the bill was supposed to be sent to rules, and we voted against that because we had put so much work into that bill that we didn't want it to go to rules and have someone else reconstruct it. Because what we needed to have was our local school districts and our local school boards involved in those decisions, because what they weren't given credit for was the fact that they had already been working on this. Senator Robinson, Noah, he surveyed every school district in the state to see what their cell phone policies were. And he was very encouraged because school districts know what's going on in their classrooms, and they had taken steps to make sure that a lot of these things were addressed. One superintendent said to me, now I'm going to have to hire somebody to manage cell phones, and there's no repercussions. Nothing can happen to someone if they do have their cell phone and don't honor whatever the school rules are. Yes, the school districts need to come up with a plan. How that plan is going to be accepted, I don't know yet. But it's another point of eroding local control in decision making. And I was I was amazed that the information that I got from kids on how they can get around it.
Right.
Bring a burner phone to school and put that in the package. But, and the other thing is looking at how much this is going to cost school districts. It's probably going to cost them someone in the workforce. And if depending upon what kind of way they decide to go forward with this, it could cost up to $35 a student. When we are looking at the decreased amount of money that we have for education and the money we're probably not going to get from the feds, we're looking at something that's really going to be hurtful for our communities. And so, once again, I think our governor has overstepped her bounds. And so that's my opinion on it.
Suzanne, can I add something? Suzanne, let me add something. For those who don't know, this the bill is a bell-to-bell cell phone ban in schools.
Yes.
And like Suzanne just said, like the senator just said, it's really just another unfunded mandate for these school districts.
Yeah.
Also, and I've done some research myself. So some of these schools throughout the state have their students using their cell phones for their lunch programs. Because the schools don't have the money to print cards anymore. So they're having the students are actually using their phones for that. And also
some math classes.
And some classes don't have
calculators.
They don't have computers or calculators, and they're asking the students to use their phones for research during classes. So there's a lot of research that should have been done, like you said, the hard work. The schools have already figured out how to do this. This is definitely a sketchy bill, but sorry to interrupt there. I just want to make sure people knew that it was a bell to bell. And the other safety concerns, my partner Michelle is very concerned about her daughter not being able to reach her during some kind of an emergency at school. So lots of things to talk about there. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
We don't have flash floods like they have in Texas, but we do have the possibility of earthquake, tsunami. We have issues within our own area that could be impactful and could require that necessary communication.
Absolutely.
And our school districts figured out in the beginning that, students figured it out first, how to cheat with cell phones and be able to, communicate with their friends' answers on tests, but they took care of that. They understand it. It took them a while, but yes, it was taken care of. And so those sorts of issues have been addressed. So, and we've got school districts with maybe 2 kids in them. How is this going to impact them?
Right.
So anyway, I think that we just have to look forward to hopefully some happier times, hopefully getting this transportation issue resolved. And as you know, they have already started, back to that, I'm sorry, 483 layoff notices have been sent, and there will probably be more of them today. I'm going to be on a call at 11 this morning to talk about that and how that's, hopefully we're going to resolve some of these issues. But I guess we have to look forward to some more joyful times like parade season, county fair, and waiting for the dialysis information. So
Okay.
anyway, I could go on and on, but I will stop right
Well,
there.
looks like we have Representative Javadi on the call today, which is unusual. So I'm looking forward to hearing his take on all of this.
Yes. Well, then I'll let you listen to him.
All right, let's thank you very much, Senator, and let's jump over to the House. Representative Javadi, are you on the line? I do see his number there. Well, I'll let him speak up when he has a chance. We'll move on to the Tillamook County Community Health Center.
Commissioner, may I?
Oh, yes.
Oh, thank you. So maybe Representative Javadi is having trouble unmuting, in which case I have a couple of things I'd like to respond to Senator Weber. For one thing, I wanted to jump in on the conversation about the bell-to-bell ban for cell phones because it's so interesting. Hey, good morning, Representative. Go ahead.
Oh, right. Did I interrupt? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, I was just responding to the Senator Weber was talking about the bell-to-bell ban on cell phones and how interesting I think that is on lots of levels. I can see all kinds of problems inherent in it, and but also it's just fascinating and complicated because of AI. It's the ability now for people to just look up the answers on tests, et cetera, to use AI for all of their schoolwork is exponentially high. And so, they do have to figure out some way to address that. But I always think about with new things like this, particularly unfunded mandates, I always think about what are the unintended consequences? And in this case, I think the safety issues that you and Commissioner Fournier brought up are unintended consequences, certainly, but also there will be psychological, emotional unintended consequences because truly people in our society are addicted to their phones. I've read about it. I've read that people are now addicted to the multi-daily, multi-hourly little dopamine boost that they get from getting on their phones. And so there's going to be all kinds of behavioral, emotional consequences from people being separated from their phones who've become addicted to them. And I don't think there's any preparation. I haven't heard or read about any preparation for that. I think we're just totally unprepared for that.
Yes, and the other thing that we're seeing is that there is a real cost to critical thinking. People are being spoon-fed all of this information, and because of AI also, they are not having to use their critical thinking skills, and so they're not making good life decisions. And so there's, those sorts of things also that need to be considered.
Absolutely.
One of the things I asked the teachers when we interviewed the teachers in one of our last sessions was, what do you see as far as critical thinking skills? And they said there basically are none. Nobody's thinking things through, and if they are, they're not doing that good of a job. So we may have gained things by being able to have this resource, but we've also lost things. And I think that our losses are greater than some of our gains.
I agree. It's very complicated and it's impossible to unwind now. So it seems like a bell-to-bell ban is trying to unwind something that may be too late. But I agree about critical thinking, and it's fascinating. I'm personally related to someone who's very, very young and very bright, but just doesn't do their own fact checking. And I think what is missing here with the assumption that everything a person reads online is true? It's very odd.
It's very odd. Right. Think about it. Teenagers don't they doubt everything their parents say, but for some reason, they'll believe everything they read on their phone.
You're absolutely right. This is strange.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to step in here.
All right, I was just waiting. That was an interesting aside about about AI. I think it's definitely something that we see a lot of
Well, good morning,
policymakers.
Cyrus.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Fantastic.
All right. Quick update. The good senator covered everything as she usually does so well. I'll give you kind of my take on a few of those things and let you guys get to the other people who I know are waiting to have their moment to update the community. First off, the dialysis bill or the dialysis center that Eric brought up this morning. As soon as he was talking, I got on the phone and contacted OHA. I just heard back from them. They'll have an update for us today. I told them absolutely unacceptable. This is something that's been going on for a year and a half. 6 months ago, I had the director of OHA in my office. I was very firm and said this is completely unacceptable and real people are suffering. There's absolutely no reason for these continued delays. Let's get it done. They assured me 28 days later they'd have something issued for the dialysis clinic to start working, and here we are now at the beginning of July. The message I got back was, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is still going on. We'll get back to you right away, which isn't encouraging coming from an organization that gets a $30 billion a year in money to manage for the state of Oregon. But I will follow up on that. I'm hoping I'll get a phone call later from Eric today or a text message saying, oh my gosh, the permit has arrived. But I will not let go of this bone now that it's in my mouth for today. The next thing is layoffs from ODOT. There are approximately 500. I reached out to the governor's office yesterday to see what the impact would be on Tillamook and Clatsop counties, and I should be hearing back today specifically how many, if any, will be in our district. I know that many of the rural communities will be the most heavily impacted. Per a news story yesterday, which is unfortunately how legislators got their information rather than directly from the governor. But in fairness, there was an email later in the day with some FAQs in it, but there'd be a phone call today at 11 o'clock this morning from the governor's office giving us all more updates. So I apologize for the vagueness and not having better data for the community, but as soon as we have something, we will get it out there. I was at some of the parades this weekend with Good Senator and with Commissioner Fournier, and it was good to see everybody. Always a wonderful time to remember how we got where we are and what we should be grateful for. And thanks for all the community support. Another thing on my radar is the big, beautiful bill that passed out of Congress. There is a huge bill. It's 1,000 pages long. I have definitely not read through everything that's in that bill. I don't know that most members of Congress have read everything that's in that bill. I'm working through it. One of the things that I am concerned about, though, is its impact on Medicaid. For our community, that's a big deal. In Tillamook and Clatsop County, more than half of our kids receive Medicaid, and just under half of our adults receive Medicaid. Now, earlier in the session, one of the first bills we passed with bipartisan support was expanding or extending the way we fund Medicaid as a state here in Oregon, which was critical to making sure services continued and the hospitals continued to have the funds they need to stay open. Hospitals really depend on that is one of their revenue streams, among others. It looks like there will be definitely some impacts to the way that money is allocated and distributed in Oregon to communities, and what the impacts will be on providers as well as hospitals and patients is still unclear. I'm working through that, but I expect that there will be some changes that are going to be coming as a result of it. And as I get more details, I will let the community know. But definitely concerning, and there are other issues in the big, beautiful bill that need to be unpacked, and I'm working through those. And like I said, I'll have some updates. But as far as the session went, it was good. It was a good session. I feel like we got a lot of great things accomplished. We had some things that didn't quite get there, One of those was the changes to the transient lodging tax allocation. I know some members of the community have been following that, others haven't. And in brief, that transient lodging tax is a little tax that's charged for when people stay in Airbnbs, or the short-term rentals, hotels, campsites, and then that money gets split between into two buckets. One goes to the tourism industry for marketing and other projects, and then another bucket is for local governments to use for things like law enforcement, wastewater, garbage pickup. It's all the stuff that happens to a community when we have an influx of tourists every summer. We got it as close as it's been in the last 22 years. The change was going to be, instead of 70% going to tourism and 30% going to the community, it was going to be 40% has to be spent on tourism, and then the other 60% is completely flexible. A community that wants to grow their tourism industry can spend all of that on tourism, so they could effectively have spent 100% if they wanted to. But a community like Tillamook or Seaside or others along the coast that are just inundated with tourism because of the success of this program over the decades, and the fact that this is the Oregon coast, which almost doesn't need any advertising, but we still do. We may not want to spend 100%. We may only want to spend 40%, or maybe it's 50%, but each community gets to decide. And that bill nearly got across the finish line. Due to some politics at the very end, or around the transportation bill, even though the two weren't really related, that bill died in its committee. And so we'll be bringing that one back to try to get that one finished up in the short session. So while it was, we didn't get it this time, I think we will in the future. And that will be just, and I'll let the commissioners later expand on that, but it's a great way to get more money into the community without crushing our tourism industry and without having to raise any taxes. And so whenever we can find a solution that gets money going to things like infrastructure, which would allow us to build more houses, or which would allow us to hire more police officers, or more, buy new garbage trucks, or more garbage trucks or hire, or get the roads fixed up a little bit nicer, et cetera. I mean, the list is a mile long, and I know that we need that fund. Some of our biggest successes this session, and I'll go over these in future weeks, but the first one I'll start with was the corporate practice of medicine. And this bill was a landmark bill. It's the first of its kind in the country. This is a bipartisan bill I worked on with the majority leader, Ben Bowman, and this one looks at what's happening to healthcare in Oregon and tries to correct it. So around the country, big corporations like Amazon and Optum and Walmart and others are buying up little medical practices and big medical practices and entire health systems, actually, and then they're corporatizing them, which brings with it certain benefits and efficiencies, like you've got an HR department, and you've got accounts receivable and billing and all the rest that doctors and health systems spend a lot of money and resources on. But what they're also doing, these corporations are working their way into the exam rooms. They're making decisions for doctors. They're limiting care. They're rationing care. They're cutting back on expenses that are critical to patient care in the effort to just maximize profits. And in fact, entire health systems like in Eugene and around the state are closing because corporations will come in, they'll find that the little system or doctor's office they bought wasn't as productive as they wanted it to be. They close it down, and then those patients now have less choices in their community, and they have to drive farther and spend more at different clinics. And we just felt like that was unacceptable. The way that it was going to limit competition. We thought there was real strength in independent clinics, being able to offer care tailored to their community and to their members, rather than having a CEO or CFO back in New York City or other places in the country dictating that care. And so the corporate practice of medicine bill that we passed would prevent these big corporations from getting into the exam room and making health decisions that affect your health, my health. And so that was a big win for Oregon. It'll help keep our healthcare accessible and available and tailored to what we need, not what makes the most sense profit-wise. So that was a huge win. And that's it for now. And I already talked about layoffs, yeah. So I don't have any other updates at this moment. And like I said, Senator Weber did a great job of covering everything else. I guess I will say on the transportation bill, that was a big disappointment. It was unfortunate that it took until the end of session to get that bill out for legislators to look at. We were very concerned, Senator Weber and I, about the cost that would have on members of the community, but especially those on fixed incomes like our seniors, those who are just starting out in life, or maybe single moms and are, really affected by even small increases in prices at the pump. And this was going to affect everything from gas prices to registration fees, driver's license fees, electric vehicle fees. And when we looked at it, we just said there's no way that this can be absorbed at this moment and without any real tangible benefit to show for it. Meaning, a lot of that money that would get collected as part of that tax would again be go towards projects along I-5. And I felt like without some real mechanics in that bill to make sure that rural communities are getting their share of the benefit too, and without some real accountability, make sure that the Oregon Department of Transportation is using the money wisely, that we don't have another $1 billion budget mess up, that we should be careful about what we're spending going forward. And I know they were working hard on it. Like Senator Weber said, there were 28 amendments in the course of a week. It just didn't quite get there. And I think the biggest tragedy of it all is that it has resulted at this point in those layoffs, and that nobody's happy about that. And I'm hoping that we can get to a resolution quickly. I assume the governor is serious when she says there'll be a special session in the next few months, and that there will be a fix. And so my apologies to anybody who's being laid off or affected by this. I think the legislature could have done a better job at getting a solution to this problem. And, honestly, we dropped the ball at the end by not getting something there, but it wasn't for lack of effort. And I don't think anyone specifically is to blame, although I know that that's easy to start pointing fingers. I just think that as a whole, we could have gotten something more bipartisan and something that ticked off the right boxes and wasn't such a burden and an expense to members of our community. And so I'm hopeful that we can get back to the table soon and get that fixed. And that's my update for now. Just glad to be back in the community and back in the dental office, fixing teeth and doing stuff that works when you actually try to do it, and not having to have a committee of 90 to sort it out. But also, like I said, felt like we had a lot of big successes that I'll cover in future weeks, that and also keep you guys updated on what's happening with the impacts of things like the big beautiful bill and other issues.
All right. Well, thank you for that, and I'm hoping to hear some good news later today from Eric regarding the clinic. And we'll move on now to Tillamook Community Health Center. Camille, are you on the line still?
Good morning, I am here.
Good morning.
I personally just want to say this is my first summer in Tillamook County. I live out in Rockaway, so I got to take in the 4th of July festivities out there, and I was really impressed with all the different activities and, of course, the crowds and everything else. But I think that was the best fireworks show I've seen in my entire lifetime. So
Wow.
I just wanted to give kudos to all of the people involved in putting on that show. And I did hear some sirens going on, and just wanted to, I thought a lot about the first responders and emergency personnel that are keeping everybody safe while they get to enjoy the holidays. So thank you for that.
That's great.
I just have one message today, and that is regarding skin cancer. This weekend was really nice and sunny, and even though it's misty sometimes, we do have to consider the effect of the sunshine UV rays on our skin. It's easy to forget about the health of your skin, but it's an important organ, and finding changes in your skin, such as new moles or other marks, can be an early sign of skin cancer. Melanoma is a type of skin cancer that is the deadliest type, but also very treatable when you catch it early. People with melanoma have a 99% survival rate when treated early, and this changes to 30% after this cancer has spread to other organs. It's best to check your skin at least monthly for any marks that look new or different from other marks. If you see something, especially if it looks like it's changing, get it checked out by a medical professional. And now you don't have to travel too far or wait too long to see a doctor specialized in skin health, which is a dermatologist. Dermatologist Dale Westrom is back in town, and his physician assistant, Deb Rainbow, are taking appointments regarding your skin concerns starting this Wednesday, tomorrow the 9th. They can diagnose and treat your skin problems from mild to severe. Appointments are available on Wednesdays from 9 to 5. You can call 503-842-3900 to schedule an appointment for the dermatologist. And that is all I have.
Well, that is great news that we have that opportunity in Tillamook. Locally, I will be looking for that myself. So that's fantastic news. Thank you, Camille.
You are welcome.
Well, let's move on up to Nehalem Bay Health Center and Pharmacy. Gail Nelson, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone. A couple of
morning.
announcements. We are going to be participating in an upcoming community event, the Salmonberry Trail groundbreaking, and we will be participating with the Nehalem Bay Health District. This will be on Saturday, July 12th, which is coming up from 1 to 5 p.m. It will be in Wheeler at the City Waterfront Park. That's off of Highway 101 in Wheeler. And we're really excited. It's a public event and celebrates the progress on the trail project and includes music, food, and community partners. So we'll have a table set up there throughout the event to engage with attendees, answer questions about our new building, spend time connecting with the community members, and we'll also have some information materials available at the table to support our outreach. And speaking of the new building, mark your calendars for another date, Saturday, October 4th from 1 to 4. This is the date for the ribbon cutting and open house. So we're finalizing details and we'll share them as they're available. Otherwise, for the building, ceramic tile flooring installation is complete. Ceilings and floorings are being installed, and the parking lot asphalt paving is complete. So we're here up on top of the hill in the meantime to serve you. If you're interested in scheduling an appointment with one of our providers, including behavioral health, please give us a call at 800-368-5182 for more information. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Gail. That's all good news. I'm so excited about the building and the Salmonberry Trail event on Saturday. So thank you for all that information. And we will move on now to Tillamook Family Counseling Center. Frank Hanna Williams, are you on the line?
Good morning, Commissioners. Frank Hanna Williams, Director, Tillamook Family Counseling Center, and Behavioral Health Services for Tillamook County residents. I don't have no major update this morning, just to say that if you have questions about any of our services or are interested in finding out information about appointments, you can reach us at 503-842-8201 or 1-800-962-2851. And that is, and if there are any calls, any calls, I can take any questions. I'd be more than happy to take any.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Frank? If not, thank you very much for that update. And coming up now is the Sheriff's Office report from Sheriff Josh Brown, who I'm sure is going to give us some stats about the busy holiday weekend. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Commissioner. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
So I actually have a whole lot of stats here, just to kind of throw out some comparisons. It's kind of interesting because the 4th of July switches every year to what day of the week it falls on. So last year, 4th of July fell on a Thursday. Of course, this year it was on a Friday. Next year it's going to be on a Saturday. So my expectation is everything's going to increase even more than it did this week or this year. But when you compare last year with 4th of July being on a Thursday to this year, it's kind of interesting. So For this year, Thursday, July 3rd through Sunday, July 6th. So Thursday through Sunday, 4-day weekend, or a 4-day time block is where the snapshot came from. Sheriff's Office handled a total of 391 calls for service. That's just under about 100 a day. Of course, we didn't average 100 a day. We had far more on Saturday, just as I heard Eric talking about. That was definitely a busy day. Just a few of the call types. We had 6 assault calls that we responded to. We only had 4 burglary or theft type calls, which is more of a property crime. We did have 7 CAMI calls that we responded to. We only had 3 disturbances. We had 68 calls about fireworks come in those 4 days. We had 2 missing person or search and rescue related calls. We had 7 motor vehicle accidents, and we ended up having 5 recreational accidents. I believe all of them were out at Sand Lake. And what's interesting about that is that it's hard to capture this because the medical calls don't come up on our stats, but quite a few of the accidents that happened out there were people reporting to the sand shed out at Sand Lake, and they were toned out or initiated as a medical call. So I believe there was probably another 4 to 6 medical calls that were directly a result of a recreational accident, which would actually bump our numbers up to over 10, probably 10 or 11. Because I don't have a good way of capturing those medical calls, it's hard to say exactly what that number is, but I would say that there was at least 10 to 12 reported recreational accidents. And I do appreciate Eric talking about how there was 2 life flight transports out of there. I actually thought it was 3, but I would tend to believe him because he probably is in the know a little bit better than me. But 2 life flights coming in over the course of a weekend is pretty significant. So as far as self-initiated activity, our business check numbers were very low. We were just so busy running around call to call. We only had 5. We did have 89 traffic stops over that 4-day period, as well as another 29 contacts. Now, comparing that to last year, which would be July 4th, a Thursday, through the 7th, which is a Sunday, we had a slightly higher total call count of 444. So that's just a little more than 50 more than what we had this year. We had less assault calls, less burglary or theft calls, less CAMI calls. We had more disturbances. We had a total of 6, which is twice as many as we had this year. We had 40 fireworks calls, which is actually significantly lower than this year's. We had 3 missing persons or search and rescue type calls. We had 11 motor vehicle accidents, which is 4 more than what we had this year. And we had 9 recreational accidents in 24. So we also had right about the same amount of traffic stops. We were at 95, whereas this year we were at 89. A higher number of contacts and a higher number of business checks as well. Now, comparing that to a random 4-day time that's a little bit more in the winter, this is where you really kind of get the idea of the increase of call volume that we handle. So I just grabbed February 6th through 9th, which is a Thursday through Sunday, same kind of a time frame, but it's in very, very early February, which tends to be a slower time of year for us. So we had a total of 222 calls for service in that time, literally 50% of what we had for the July 4th weekend in 24. We had no assault calls, no burglary or theft calls. We only had 4 CAMI calls. We had no disturbances during that 4-day time period, no fireworks calls. We had 8 motor vehicle accidents, which is right about in the middle of what the numbers are for the 4th of July weekend this year and last year. We had no recreational accidents. We did have 17 business checks. We did have 64 traffic stops, which is less than what we had during our 4th of July weekend this year as well as last year. And we only had 7 contacts, which is significantly lower than the 4th of July weekends. Also, I did pull the stats for how many actual citations were issued in 2024 on the 4th of July weekend. There were 88 tickets issued. And there was in the February timeframe, which is just a comparison week, we only had 22 citations issued. Computer system shows 40 citations issued for this year. However, those numbers are not accurate because we still have tickets that need to be entered into the system. So I almost don't want to bring that number in, but my guess would be is that we're probably closer to 60 or 70 citations for the 4th of July weekend this year alone. Those are the stats that I have that I was able to pull up just to give everybody kind of a snapshot of how busy we were. Of course, Commissioner Fournier, you talked with Eric about Sand Lake, and it was absolutely crazy. After I did the Clover's Day parade, which was great, I actually geared up and went out and did some patrolling. I went out and actually rode with our Sand Lake deputy and actually rode around with the National Forest, the Sand Lake FPO, just to kind of see things, help do a little bit of enforcement, and it was absolutely crazy. It was chaotic. And like I said, that was on Saturday, and I worked out there as the Sand Lake deputy for 4 seasons, and it was extremely busy. Just a lot of chaos, very hard to keep up with everything that was going on. I think they were going contact to contact with very little time in between. So there was a lot of medical calls. There was a lot of contacts. There was a lot of recreational accidents, all of which happened out there. I've already been in contact or will be in contact with Forest Service to see if we can develop a plan to maybe curb that a little bit for next year. We don't want to repeat that kind of chaos. It was just very, very unsafe. So we will be having conversations to see what we can do to kind of curb that a little bit, while still allowing people to have fun. You know, we want them to enjoy the space, but of course, safety is a huge concern for us. So hopefully next year, because like I said, the 4th of July will be on a Saturday, we can kind of keep it a little bit calmer. As I mentioned, I did the Clover's Day parade. I saw Commissioner Fournier there. I was able to see Senator Weber and Representative Javadi. It was great to visit with them and kind of talk about things and be in that parade. You know, the small town local parades are the best. I'm not kidding you. They are just great to be a part of. I love doing it every year. The day before, on the actual 4th of July, I was able to lead the parade in Rockaway. That is another great one. Just huge crowds of people. Love coming out there. Weather was great. A lot of good fun. So I really, really enjoy being able to take part of all those local parades. Dory Days is going to be coming up. I'll take part of that as well. And of course, we did the June Dairy Parade. So those are a lot of fun. We are prepping for the fair. You know, we always try to have multiple deputies out there, staff out there. We just have, you know, tens of thousands of people that come there. And so being able to have our staff out there is really beneficial. So we are working towards getting that prepped. I would encourage any kids to come by, you know, make sure that you have the lost child bracelet, as well as take a photo with our wanted poster. So it's a photo from that day, just in case you do get separated. We're also adding a spinny wheel with prizes on it just for the kids, with some special prizes. I really, really like being able to have positive interactions with the kids that come to our fair, the kids of our community. So hopefully the spin wheel will get more kids up there and they can come get a cool prize, and we can have a really good positive interaction with the kid. So last thing I want to mention is we do have openings. I believe they are up on the county website. It's for all 3 divisions needs deputies. I believe we have a records clerk position for parole and probation also. So if you are interested or you know somebody that may be interested, please have them apply, or at minimum have them reach out if they have questions. We have a very responsive staff here that love to talk and chat with people and answer any questions. So that is all I've got. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Paul, I'm sure you're going to put me on the spot like you did Eric. I don't know. Let's give it a whirl.
I was just going to mention that some folks may not realize that they used to limit the entries into Sand Lake for safety reasons years ago, and then we stopped doing that. It might be something we need to look at with, you know, in the coordination with the Forest Service, that we might have to try to limit that, because Yeah, those numbers, and the amount of people that there was thousands of people, and that there's not that many square miles of the Sand Lake recreational area. So something to look
Those
at.
those conversations are already happening.
I would assume so. Also, Under Sheriff Kelly and I were speaking over the weekend. One of the things I wanted to mention, he really didn't want to get on here, was I'll quickly mention here for everybody to be aware that the county has provided some additional funding to the sheriff's office for some parking and day use enforcement and compliance at the boat ramps and parking lots throughout the county. So if you're visiting those areas, you might want to make sure you have your pass in your window or purchase a pass for the day. We're trying to get some compliance. I've had a lot of complaints. Commissioners get a lot of complaints about people not paying for parking at the day use areas and the boat ramp. So I just wanted to give everybody a fair warning that I know that there was a deputy out this weekend that worked for an hour or so, just focusing on that enforcement. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I appreciate your detailed report. So with that,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. We'll move on to emergency management. Randy Thorpe.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Just wanted to mention a couple things. One is that D word, drought. Right now, statewide, we're looking at the State Office of Emergency Management is begun their drought watch for this year. A lot of it's because the U.S. Drought Monitor that comes out weekly with updates has put the entire state in abnormally dry, but there is a nice little brownish orange circle right around Tillamook County. And according to the U.S. Drought Monitor, that indicates that Sevier County is entirety is in a severe drought condition. It's a lot of based on predictions of weather for, throughout the summer, but it's looking a little bit like we're going to have some possible drought issues like we had last year. So far this year, there's 2 counties within our state that have already declared an emergency due to drought, and that is Baker County and our neighbors to the south, Lincoln County, have both already made a declaration of emergency there. So here in Tillamook County, we'll be, monitoring that again this year, making sure that we stay on top of any needs or problems that happen within our county. Right now, we're in contact with the Oregon Water Resources, and that's basically the District 1 water master that kind of oversees the county and the water resources here. And I've been in contact with her to try to see what types of issues may be coming up and what's being predicted. We're also, working a lot with our local water masters just to find out where we're at. And so if we start to have some major issues coming on, we can go ahead and get that emergency declaration here for our county too, which helps bring in state resources and other resources in to help us deal with any type of drought conditions that we may have. So again, just be prepared that unless we get some major changes in some weather and some monsoonal weather here in the middle of the summer, it looks like we're going to have a pretty dry year. And the other problem, along with going into a drought condition, is the wildland fire issues that also crop up when we have extremely dry conditions. So not only are we going to may look at possible restrictions on water use, but also be extremely careful if you're using any type of fire or any other types of ignition sources out there while you're recreating and enjoying the summer. It's getting very dry out there now, and we do not want to have any types of wildland fire occurring along with our droughts. So just be extremely careful when you're out there. If you do seem to if you're on private wells or you're starting to see some other issues going on, you can, contact me. You can contact your cities that you live in, or you can go ahead and, contact the county health department for any type of assistance that we may be able to help you with on that. So again, just be careful out there, and again, just be prepared that there may be some drought issues happening this year. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner Forney.
Thank you, Randy. And I just wanted to mention along those lines of wildfires, is people should be taking advantage of the yard debris program. We can get the free pass to dump yard debris at the dump, and that's a good way of creating some defensible space around your property and your house. So just wanted to mention that. We were going to move on to the ODOT update. Bill Jablonski can't be here today. I do have on my little cheat sheet here, I have some projects that he wanted us to update. Unfortunately, these projects came out right around when the ODOT bill failed. So I don't want to give any false hope that these things are going to be completed because we don't know about layoffs. I will say that the Garibaldi paving project is pretty much completed. Paving on side streets, striping, and landscaping should be done by the end of July. And there's a tentative ribbon cutting scheduled for Saturday, 7/26, ahead of the Garibaldi Days Parade. So I will just update with that, and we'll wait till next week to update on some of these other things to see if they're still going to happen. There's a bunch of paving projects and some painting projects, but I don't want to mention those unless I'm sure it's going to happen. So now with that, I'll move on to Commissioner Bell.
Good morning, everyone. Well,
Good morning.
I'd like to follow up on, good morning. I'd like to follow up on emergency management and talk about that for a minute, because I've had a thoughtful woman reach out to me last night and talk to me about her reaction to the tragedy that happened in Texas and her fear for our community as a flood-prone community. And I appreciated the conversation and her sharing her concerns. And she was asking, why don't we know that we are flood prone. We're extremely flood prone because we have so many rivers and also tsunami risk. And why don't we have sirens? And we used to have sirens. We need to bring them back. Why don't we have sirens? And so she was thinking about ways that we could potentially protect our community from a similar disaster, which I really appreciate. You know, I think that most of us are watching the news about Texas with heavy hearts, and it's just horrifying, and thinking about our own communities and our own families, and how can we better protect ourselves and each other. And so it's worth talking about sirens for a minute, because we do have some sirens. We have several different kinds of flood risk. We don't have the exact same kind they have in the Texas Hill Country, for example. We don't have the desert-driven flash flood risk. Flooding happens differently here. It's still flooding, but flash flooding that happens in dry desert places is a little different than our flooding. So the flooding risks that we have here are riverine flooding from storms, from weather. We also have the risk of river flooding from broken dams, and that's different. And we certainly have tsunami risk. So three different significant risks. Tillamook County used to have tsunami sirens along the coast. Those were decommissioned maybe 15 years ago, before we were commissioners, of course. And but I remember when it happened, not the year. And I remember Gordon McCraw, who is the previous emergency manager, talking about the decision that Board of Commissioners made to decommission those sirens. And the reasons were that they were tsunami sirens, and they were out of date. They were failing. The technology, the equipment was failing. There wasn't a budget, of course, to invest in fixing them up or replacing them. But while they were researching that, what would it take? What they discovered is that it wasn't an effective system in the first place, or this is how Gordon described it: that it wasn't the best system in the first place, because the risk of tsunamis comes from immediate offshore earthquakes. So there's a fault line about 80 miles off the coast, off the Oregon coast, and When that fault line breaks, that's the official word for when an earthquake happens on that fault line. When that fault line breaks and there's a massive earthquake, that's what will result in a near tsunami, a tsunami that hits us with dangerous force. And so that the warning for that would be the shaking, because it will be a massive earthquake. So for folks in the tsunami zone along the Oregon coast, and that's actually all of Oregon, Washington, up to British Columbia and down to Northern California, when there's a massive earthquake right off the coast, we'll feel the shaking 3 to 5 minutes. It'll be violent, extreme. They may feel it all the way in the valley. That's our tsunami siren. And when the shaking stops, if you're in a tsunami zone, if you're anywhere near the coast, you need to head for high water immediately. And I remember Gordon talking about if those sirens fail, they may fail in the earthquake. They may not work at all. And so the sirens may or may not work, but people won't need the sirens because they will just have lived through the shaking. So, and they won't need landlines. You know, they won't need to be notified through typical means, because not the same as a flash flood notice, where the flood is happening miles and miles away and the people don't know and they're asleep, like those poor people in Texas. So we'll know because of the shaking. And so, but there are still sirens on the Trask and the Nestucca, and that the reason for those is because there are dams at the headwaters of those rivers, and if those dams should break, then there could be floods down those river channels, which happened on the Nestucca in the 60s, maybe 62. And so there are still people around to remember that. I've talked to some of them. It was fascinating. I talked to somebody who was a child at the time, of course, and was standing up on a hillside watching the wall of water come and watching bridges that they recognized, like, because there are a lot of bridges going up in the Nestucca, and watching the bridges come down because the water knocked down the bridges. And it's fascinating. He told me a story about sending insulin to a woman across the river by arrow. You know, they worked it out, but it was a disaster. And so that's why there are tsunami sirens on the Trask and the Nestucca. It's because there are dams at the tops of those rivers. And otherwise, we have here for normal storm flooding, where the water hits, where the storm happens that affects us, is in the Coast Range. And so we know because it's close, and we have active real-time river level gauges, and we have great relationships with NOAA, with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, does all kinds of warnings and alerts, and the National Weather Service works closely with Randy. However, those national jobs are, assuming that those budgets aren't cut, those services are very, very important to our safety. So I just wanted to talk about that for a few minutes because I had the conversation with a woman who's worried about sirens and the sirens that were removed some time ago. That was why. And also because, we're all thinking about that. We're thinking about those poor people in Texas. I'd like to talk about the TLT bill that Representative Javidi talked about. First, I want to thank Representative Javidi and Senator Weber for their heroic efforts to move that forward, because as Representative Javidi described, the ability for local governments to use more of that revenue is essential to our operations. So here we can use 30% of TLT revenue on local government services, the sheriff's office, for example, but others as well. And we could have, and so we use it on roads because we need it on roads. That was the arrangement that former Board of Commissioners made, and it was the right thing to do because it's almost made our roads department whole. So that makes sense. And if we took it away from the roads department at this point, then we would create a deficit in that budget that we would have to replace some other way. So it wouldn't make sense. If the bill had gone through, we could have used it to shore up the sheriff's department and the other general fund departments, which are essential to the services that we provide. And it was so close. It was so, other people have worked on this before, and Representative Javity and Senator Weber got that so close to the finish line that it was really, I'm very, very grateful. They worked so hard on it. And a lot of other people supported it, testified. Commissioner Fournier did, Commissioner Scar and I did, lots of people did. And it was very close, and it was politicked away at the last minute. So I'm grateful that Rep Javity said that they're going to work on that again in the short session, because that's maddening and disappointing. And in our local TLT election, we had proposed raising TLT locally, and that lost by 12 votes. So that was also very close. And I thank the people who worked on that campaign also. It was very close. And so I think it's important that people know that we need additional revenue to fund the services we currently provide. And if we don't, this Board of Commissioners doesn't come up with new revenue to continue, because our costs are going up. So to continue to fund the services we currently provide, we'll end up in a situation where we have to cut services and cut staff, like they were talking about the ODOT staff who are losing their jobs, which is also devastating to people in our communities. And you know, when I think about that, I don't think we provide any services that people don't need. And we provide a lot of services that people absolutely want and need. And moreover, every single person in a county job is part of our community. You know, we're every single job in this county, not only in county employed, but in our community, every single job is important, because it's important to the economy, it's important to their family, it's important to the businesses that they support, it's important to every single one of us is an economic driver in our own community. And all of those jobs are important. And so it's, you know, we'll continue to move through the process and try to find sources of revenue. But if we don't, we're going to end up in a terrible position in the near future. So those were two disappointing outcomes, and they will, and we have to keep working on it. Otherwise, you know, we'll have to end up making painful cuts. So another thing I wanted to talk about was, I appreciate Rep Javity talking about the big beautiful bill, and I say that with rolling eyes because it's not beautiful to me, but it may be to some people who are listening. There are ways that are unclear at the moment how that will impact us right this second, but is almost sure to, in the sense of the cuts to Medicaid. There are a lot of things that I'm worried about in that bill, but Medicaid is the first, because health of people in our community. And not everybody realizes that Medicaid is called different things in different states. So somehow, you know, I think some people across not just here, but nationwide, think Medicaid is something that happens somewhere else. But here it's the Oregon Health Plan. And so I read one article that tried to unpack what are the potential consequences to each state individually, because it will be different. And that article said that in Oregon, there are approximately 200,000 people on the Oregon Health Plan who may end up without insurance. And I had a woman reach out to me recently. She was terrified about Medicaid being cut. You know, she maybe didn't know that commissioners we don't impact the federal decisions, but I listened to her, of course. And her sister is elderly and profoundly disabled and relies on Medicaid for everything. Like she's mentally and physically disabled and relies on Medicaid for everything. And she was terrified, like, what happens if that funding gets cut? And and how I won't be able to take care of my sister, and who will take care of my sister, and et cetera. So, the Oregon Health Plan, I guarantee you that everyone on this call and everyone listening to this call knows people who are on the Oregon Health Plan. So that's what's at risk here. And the bill is maddening to me in the sense that if they had actually balanced the budget or reduced the deficit and made painful cuts, that would have been easier to swallow. But because if we understood why the cuts were necessary, that would have been easier to get behind. But the deficit increased, and very wealthy people got big tax cuts, and cuts will be made to essential services to people in Oregon and across the nation. And also there's weird spending in it, like the representative was talking about. It's 1,000 pages long, and there are all kinds of things hidden in there. But one that I read about just this morning was $85 million to move the Space Shuttle Challenger from the National Collection in the Smithsonian to Texas. Some Texas lawmakers got that in the bill, that they want the shuttle to come home to Texas at the cost of $85 million. And I was thinking, that $85 million represents a lot of health insurance for poor people. So that is maddening and very concerning. And I don't think we know yet how that will play out locally. And the cuts to Medicaid may not come until after the 2026 election. So it may not be immediate either. So that's a bleak note, and I'm madly scrambling to think of something positive to end on. So I'll talk about the June Dairy Parade, because we weren't on the air last week. The June Dairy Parade was awesome. It was just so great. There were fabulous entries. The weather was perfect. The parade route was well delineated. There was all kinds of help. It was just very smooth. It felt very smooth and safe and happy, and everyone who participated in that did an outstanding job. And I was grateful to Cheryl Davy, who's a previous Tillamook city councilor, for being able to ride in her father's 1964 T-Bird, which was a real treat. That's my birth year. It was a gorgeous car, and it was really fun to get to know Cheryl a little bit and be able to ride her father's T-Bird, which he bought when it was brand new. And the whole thing was just really happy and wonderful, and made me so glad that I live here. All right, thanks. That's it.
All right, thank you for that. And yeah, unfortunately I missed the June Dairy Parade because I was at County College, so I'm glad you were there representing. Well, let's move. I'm sorry, folks, we've gone long today, but let's move on to Manzanita. Mayor Stock, I think I see your number. At least I did. Are you on?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, this is Catherine in Manzanita. Hey, just a couple of things from Manzanita this morning. I'll just add on our portion of the 4th of July update. We had a really great parade here in town, as we do every year. And it was just a wonderful day. The weather cooperated. There's a beautiful, cool breeze, which everybody appreciated, standing in our gorgeous sunshine that day. So lots and lots of kids, lots and lots of local businesses, people just really having a good time. The theme this year was family and friends and fun and hometown pride, and it just went very well. So it was always a pleasure to participate in that parade and just see the faces of everyone as you come down Lanita Avenue with the smiles and the families. And even in a time when we have lots of people who are in disagreement with each other about the best path forward, it was still just a time for everyone to enjoy themselves, and that was great. So it was a great day. Another note, I was listening especially to the updates on the Sand Lake stuff. I was like, what? That was pretty disturbing to hear. But here, in our own small way, we were attending to safety and some concerns about fire as well. We really made a big effort this year to start to reduce the illegal fireworks activity. We've had an ordinance on the books for decades now prohibiting fireworks that are not very tightly controlled, meaning like small little handheld things that kids can have and stuff like that. So our Public Works Department, our law enforcement groups spend a good bit of time preparing this year, educating the public, reminding people of our local ordinance, and then I think we made a difference. It wasn't eliminated, certainly, but the activity overall was less, and it was startlingly quiet here the night after the 4th, which really surprised me as someone who's been through the 4th of July here for many, many years. I'd like to thank the neighboring communities who also had signage up on the highway. So as you came down the 101, for several towns in a row, you would see from Cannon Beach, particularly down to Rockaway, signs up on the highway, just reminding people that in the case of Cannon Beach, the fireworks are illegal altogether, but also the reminder here in Rockaway that illegal fireworks are illegal and they're not allowed. And I do think that made a difference, and we will double down on those efforts next year. I think one of the things that particularly gives people pause now about fireworks, not everybody, but many people, is the risk of fire. And I had that on my mind as I was listening to Randy's update earlier about drought and the increased risk for fire that we'll probably face the rest of this summer. So a good day. We're happy that it went well. We're happy that we had such a high participation level in the community. And speaking of participation, we'd like to remind everyone that on August 2nd, Saturday at 11 a.m., Manzanita will be officially opening our new City Hall, and we welcome everyone in the immediate and adjoining communities to join us for that day. And more news on that as it gets closer. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And we'll move on to anybody from Nehalem or Wheeler? Hearing none. We'll move on to Rockaway. I know Charles is on the line. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. A couple of things. Movies in the park continue at Phyllis Baker Park on Thursday, July 10th with The Goonies. I will tell you, I only recently watched The Goonies because of a celebration and a story, and it was quite the wonderful movie. So encourage families and individuals and tourists and visitors to come out to Phyllis Baker Park on Thursday. The movie starts around 8:30 p.m. And if you haven't been to the park, I'll tell you it's a wonderful location for an outdoor movie experience. Next, our third member of the Rockaway Beach Patrol, Deputy Terrence Waters, began his first shift in Rockaway Beach on July 2nd. So welcome, Deputy Waters, and we look forward to meeting you at the next City Council meeting. And then speaking of our meetings, I think community members attending public meetings will be pleased to know that the old, uncomfortable red folding chairs have been replaced with new, more comfortable seating. I've actually checked them out, sat in them. They're absolutely wonderful. They're cushioned. So when we have those long City Council meetings, it'll be much easier for people to sit and listen and be part of the council business meeting. I guess that's it. I guess I should say we also had a wonderful 4th of July here in Rockaway Beach. I share Mayor Stock's comments about how exciting it is. It's the one day of the year where it seems virtually everybody's happy in town. And for me as mayor, it's my favorite day when I get to ride in the parade and see all the smiling faces and the kids and wave at folks. And this year I got to ride in the jump seat of a Model A Ford driven and provided by Barry Mamano, a longtime resident of Rockaway Beach. And that was a really wonderful experience. So with that, back to you, Commissioner.
Well, that's fantastic, Charles. Thank you for that report. Appreciate that. We'll move on to anybody from Garibaldi. I don't think I saw any numbers. How about Bay City?
Good morning, Commissioner Fournier. This is Mayor Welch. How are you today?
I'm great. Good morning, Mayor.
Well, I'm glad that we were talking about emergency preparedness. I would like to thank Senator Weber and Representative Javadi. This week, we had kind of a ribbon cutting up at one of our water reservoirs. So Senator Weber supported our 2023 capital projects legislation where Bay City received $250,000 for earthquake isolation valves. So hopefully in an earthquake, when the ground shakes, we have a valve that will close and hopefully keep all of our water in our reservoirs. So this happened at 2 reservoirs, and we're building a 3rd one with money from Water Resources. So we could possibly save 1.5 million gallons of water with these isolation valves that then we could have water supply after an earthquake for our community. So again, big shout out to Senator Weber and Representative Javadi. And I tell you, this weekend, or the 4th of July, the Bay City campground was full to capacity. And our campground is open. It's first come, first serve. There's no reservations. And that was busy all week. And then a shout out to Rockaway Beach for inviting Bay City to participate in their 4th of July parade. That was certainly a lot of fun, packed in Rockaway Beach. And it was a good weekend here all around. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Leanne, for that. Appreciate that update. City of Tillamook, last on the list, but not last in my heart. Sean, are you on today? I did not see his number. Well, with that, I think that's all. We've gone through the whole list. I want to thank everybody for being on and thank KTIL for broadcasting. And I hope everybody has a fantastic day.